Here we go at the mastering stage. Now, if you're familiar with my methods, my school of thought, and maybe you got some other courses here on ProMix Academy, maybe you follow me, you already know what's my view on mastering, how I look at it. If a mix is done well, and especially if the client already approved it, because you sent a reference level version of the mix so he can compare, then mastering really is the last 5% top, okay? This is the case when I master my own mixes, of course, and most of the times clients ask me to do that. When I receive someone else's mix to master, then there could be some problem to fix, maybe a resonance too harsh, unbalanced low end, maybe the stereo image is messed up, so many things, but there can be things to fix. And there's nothing wrong in fixing those things in mastering, because sometimes the nature of working on a 2-track, on a stereo track, it gives better results than trying to fix it in a mix if it's not a big issue. Not things like, oh, the kick and bass are out of phase and there's no low end, there's no way to boost it, or the vocals is like 60 dB louder. But minor things, it's sometimes, most times, better to address them in mastering just because of the nature of working on a 2-track. Same goes for enhancing. That's my mix, I like it, I like how it sounds, but maybe after 2 days, I listen to it with fresh ears and I find, hey, you know, maybe I can give it a little more grit here. Maybe the stereo image could be a little wider, maybe a little narrower. Maybe I could give some more punch in that frequency range. There's room for enhancement, okay? But all that combined, to me, whether you have to fix something or whether you have to enhance something, it doesn't exceed 5% if I master my mixes, and maybe 20% if I master someone else's mix, or yeah, sometimes more, because you can actually make a big difference in mastering with a bad mix and bring it from here to here, but it will never be top level, okay? So you can make the most difference probably in mastering if you get a bad mix, so you can give it 10 points, while a good mix, you can maybe give it 2 points, but that good mix with the added 2 points, it will always be superior than the bad mix with the 10 points added. They will not be at the same level, okay? And I wanted to say this because I feel like there's a lot of confusion still, actually nowadays more than ever, especially the young kids and hip-hop scene and all that, the work with stem, the work with loops. In the first place, there's confusion between what's mix and what's mastering. A lot of people seem to think that mix is mastering, all right? When they ask me quotes, and you can tell they are young kids, maybe they never worked with a producer or mix engineer before, they ask for mastering. But mastering is, you're working on a 2-track, like you see on my screen, so on the final mix. And they say like, oh, I have, I don't know, 40 tracks or 12 stems. That you don't want mastering, then you want a mix. So there's that big confusion first. And some people think mixing is producing, which is another thing. And most of you will know this already, but still. And the second thing is, I feel mastering is so overrated. It's not really overrated. It's just a byproduct of the first confusion. They think that mastering is mixing, so they expect such a huge change from the mastering stage. But that happens if the mix is really bad. And instead, if the mix is balanced, approved already, there's little to do. And the main goal for me is to bring the mix up to commercial level without destroying it in the more transparent way possible, because the client already liked the mix, how it sounds, okay? So your job as a master engineer at this point is to bring it to commercial level by keeping that balance. And if there is room for improvement, for enhancing something, then go for it and make it that 5% better, okay? With that said, let's take a look at the mastering page and what did I do on this mix. First thing, let's take a look at the insert chain. So you see here, the first one, it says 2 bus, because on this mix originally for the client, for the release, I used my solid state Logic Fusion that is here in front of me. And you can see here on my screen, this is the mix. Again, my popular video on loudness. Look at the crest factor of this mix. When you have a mix like this, bring it to level, bring it to actually stupid levels, 5.8, 5.6 actually, LUFS, and about 4 RMS. So we are pretty damn loud. But if you look at the master, it's not squashed. It still has transients, still has dynamic. Why? Because I don't have to limit 12 dB. I don't have to do 12 dB of gain reduction to limit my peaks, you know, because the mix has a bad crest factor, okay? So anyway, let me show you what the fusion does. When the stars all come out at night, coming down and meet me. Okay, so this was my first processing. It just makes the mix more cohesive, a little more aggressive, wider, bigger. This alone, it already makes a big difference by itself. But let's see what everybody probably wants to see is the limiting part. So I divide my limiting part in this case in basically 4 processors. The first one is K-clip, and we are seeing here, we are clipping 1.3 dB at the highest peak. The settings are really, really simple. I don't use a multi-band mode for the most part, especially mastering, sometimes, very rarely. So wideband, I link input and output, and I just turn the input up until I hit about 1 dB of clipping. It has several algorithms. The only 2 that I use for mastering would be smooth or crisp. In this case, smooth worked better. There's no softening of the transit, it's a 0. I'm not touching the threshold. The quality is, of course, all the way up without echo engaged, no mid-side, fully wet, and that's pretty much it. This is just completely transparent, okay? K-clip can clip on some material up to 4 or 5 dBs when being completely transparent. So 1.3, you will never hear the difference, okay? And you see it until the chorus got in, it wasn't working at all, okay? So it's tailored for like the very, very highest peaks to just take out that 1.5 dB of reduction. Then there's the compression, the Kotelnikov again. It helps when you go to limit, or like in my case, to clip again and pick limit, to take that edge off. You feed a material that is less difficult to handle for the limiters. So for me, again, it's not just about level. When I put this processor in series, it's not just, oh, I'm trying to reach the maximum level. I wouldn't use this stuff. Well, I will use this stuff for that, but also another couple of plugins that can get me like stupid loud. That's not my goal in here. And then the last one is Ozone 9 Maximizer. For this one, I usually try, depending on the song, IRC3. And it's usually balanced. Sometimes I try the clipping and the crisp, but balance is the one that I usually prefer. Or the IRC4, which is the new one, and I go between modern and transient. So these are the 3 algorithms that I prefer, especially for rock. In this case, the IRC4 transient won against the other 2, and we are doing... Stop at the rainbow to get my fill. I'm getting ready for a rock and roll party. 1.6, 1.7 dB of gain reduction. So if we sum all of them, 4.5 dB of global combined limiting and compression. I hope this was useful. I hope this was useful both technically to see what can you do in a mastering stage, and also conceptually how to look at mastering and how to look at mixing. That's the real key of loudness. We talked about this a million times. The crest factor, balance, everything else. And then you can play, of course, in mastering and try to add that 5%. But don't rely on mastering for the sound that you have in your head, okay? The sound that you want is achieved in mixing. Mastering is just, you know, if you put a limiter on your mix and hit like 4 dB of limiting and you send it out, it should be competing with the other productions. This is the end of the course. I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay safe. See you next time.